Okay, for this one we're asked to solve the inequality by graphing it in a calculator. And so what I've done is I've put both of these into the graphing calculator, and it says here when x squared minus 10x plus 24 is greater than 0. So what I did is I graphed the first or the left hand side of the inequality, and I left that alone. And then I graphed the right hand side of the inequality, y equals 0. But one thing that I did that a little different here is that I changed the color, and we'll change this to, I'm going to change it to like a yellow, okay? And I chose, when it's shaded above, that's another way of saying greater than. So this would be less than, and this would be greater than. So it's going to shade everything above y equals 0. Now here, I'm going to change the color of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up one and hit enter. And I'm just going to change that to navy. And then lastly, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom to like a standard zoom. Because I'm not quite sure where I left it, to be honest with you. So standard zoom is 6. And so we'll get a graph like this. And I'm going to have to zoom out a little bit because, oh, well, let's do like -10 to 10 on the x direction. And the y direction looked pretty good. So let's just graph this. And so what I'm looking for is where the two overlap, where the blue line overlaps with the yellow. And so I'm going to adjust this a little bit because I want to go from -1 to 5. And then in my x direction, it looks like I didn't need to go over that far. So I'm going to do 0 to, I don't know, 8. I think 8's good enough. And we'll graph that. Okay, good. Now it looks like this occurs at 4 and 6, which would make sense, I think. It's probably -4 and -6. And so let's see if we can include those values. So if, and we can, because we're looking for when it is equal to or greater than 0. So if I hit trace and I plug in, whoops, if I plug in 4, because that's where it looks like it's crossing at, y does in fact equal 0, and if I go a little bit to the left of that, it changes. Now if I enter in 6, y does in fact equal 0, and I go a little bit to the right of that. So what I'm looking for is from -infinity to 4, and from 6 to +infinity. Does that make sense? And so let me pull up the graph one more time so you guys could see that. So my y value has to be greater than 0. So I'm going to do one more look at it from a table of values perspective. What I'm looking for is what values of x correspond to my y value being greater than 0, greater than or equal to 0. So now at 4, see that it equals 0. So if I go less than 4, like towards -infinity, my y value appears to increase, and it probably will continue to increase if I keep going this way. Now, when I go back to 4, as I scroll down and I look at my corresponding y values, now I have negative y values, and that continues until I get to 6. So at 6, my y values become 0 or greater, and then that trend continues forever and ever. And so if I look at the graph of this function, basically A is the answer.